Shabbat Shalom. I'm Robert Barr, and this is Reverend Sharon Dittmar, and we are delighted to be sharing this Shabbat service with you. Truth be told, we are recording early today because, like many of you, depending on where you're living, we are expecting a major snowstorm, which in greater Cincinnati means about, an inch and a half?
It means 2 to 4 inches, and no one will know how to drive in it, so we better get home.
So we're going to do this early. So this is actually pre-recorded. It is recorded on early on Friday, but we wanted to be able to be with you. We had already planned this.
Yeah.
So we're glad you're here. We're going to start with the reading and go from there.
Okay.
Want to start?
Put away the pencil and paper. Put away the notebook and keys. Set aside the shovel and hammer. Rest. For this interval, no buying, no selling, no working, no laboring, no straining, not living in the past, not planning for the future.
This is a time for joy, for celebration, for mirth. We are here, alive, to rejoice in another Sabbath, another opportunity to be together, grateful for our family and our friends. With no distractions, we touch and are touched. The great gift of the Sabbath. So as I said, I'm Robert Barr and Sharon Dittmar, and we're here at ourjewishcommunity.org sharing this Shabbat with you. I also said this is pre-recorded. One of the amazing aspects of using technology is we can pre-record things and then show them and stream them at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to be watching live while we're streaming this. But it does allow us to do this. Our ancestors never could have conceived of clergy getting together earlier, pre-recording their words, and then sharing them at the appointed time. But technology is just a tool. It's not the point of our Jewish community. It allows us to share with you, those online, an opportunity to be together to create community. Some watch at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, other watch in archives. Whenever you watch, you're part of this amazing, remarkable community. A community that gives voice to a bold, expressive Judaism, a Judaism that keeps on growing and brings the best of modern religion in it. And that's what this is about. How do we find our voice as modern people to talk about our religious ideas, our values, how to cope with life, how to address its complexities and celebrate its joys, how to find answers to highly challenging questions, ethical questions and moral questions that we as modern people face that our ancestors never could have conceived of. That's what our Jewish communities.org is all about. That's what Congregation Beth Adam's about. And so we're so glad you're here sharing this service with us this day. So we're going to continue with the candle lighting. On this Sabbath, we create our moment in time. We pause to reflect upon our yesterdays and tomorrows, to renew our ties with families and friends, to restore our energies, to refresh our spirits.
As the sun descends and shadows lengthen, the distractions of the day give way to the stillness of night. It is time now for us to see not with our eyes, but with our hearts and minds. As the day gives way to evening, it is time for us to welcome the Shabbat.
The candles stand before us, waiting to be lit. We recall our ancestors as we too seek to dispel the darkness and banish the cold, to bring glowing softness, warmth, and safety into our homes. May the dancing flames of these candles kindle warmth within our hearts, wisdom in our minds, passion in our souls. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. Another part of a modern congregation, and it is having conversations that challenge us in different ways and new ways. Jewish identity and religious identity is changing. And
Yes.
as liberal clergy, we get to work together, and I don't think our ancestors would have thought about that. Certainly within the Jewish community, it would have been rare to have a minister participating in services, but we're comfortable with that because we have an expansive, complex, recognizing changing the identity, recognizing that the dynamics of life have changed greatly. So I'm always thrilled when Reverend Dittmar is here with us.
Well, and we don't live our separate lives in the same way we used to. I mean, just think of the former, quote, Jewish ghettos and the isolation of many different religious groups. We don't have that anymore, nor do I think it's necessarily a great idea. We live in a small world. We got to know one another and get along.
That's it. So that's why we're here. We're glad you're doing this with us. So we're going to talk about integrity.
Integrity. Yeah.
Because
we have a worship theme we use at our congregation, First Unitarian Church in Cincinnati, every month now. And this month, January 2016, it's integrity.
is that related to Martin Luther King?
I think probably
Okay.
you are clever. When I notice,
Wow.
you're clever.
Thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
notice when they select the themes, they're somehow related. Maybe not obviously, like the theme this month wasn't racism,
Right.
but there is some linkage to other activities,
Got it.
events, anniversaries, etc.
Makes sense. So that was
Does.
because when you first said it, I went, and then I've been sort of pondering why integrity. I think it's a great topic because I certainly
Yes, I
for a
do too.
lot of reasons, certainly related to King and to his work. Certainly, we're also at a time of sort of the politicking, where we wonder about if the people who are talking to us have integrity.
And I just saw The Big Short. Have you seen that?
No, I'm not.
A sad trip down non-integrity lane.
That was about the housing bubble.
Yeah.
So, and integrity really is such an important component of human life. I mean, of making society function, of being able to interact with each other.
Yes, and I had an insight on that yesterday. We do videos at First Unitarian Church on this theme too, like just a short clip, and we invited in one of our members, Al Gerhardstein.
Oh,
who I
please
know.
talk about Al.
Al is a longtime member at First Church and a civil rights lawyer in the city of Cincinnati, and he's worked on things from police reform, the collaborative agreement we have here in the city, which is very unique after the riots in 2001.
Which, can I just throw out that right now, I mean, a lot of folks, after some of the other shootings in other cities that have
Yes.
been really horrific, people have looked to Cincinnati as a
Yes.
model. So because of Al and some
And it
other
was
folks.
really Al. He was the one who brought the parties to the table and got them to sit down and negotiate because they were used to fighting on opposite sides
Right.
of the courtroom, frankly. And he's also worked on mass incarceration and prison reform and rights for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered folks.
Did he argue that case before the Supreme?
He did not argue the case in June 2015 in front of the Supreme Court, but he was the lawyer for Jim Obergefell, who was the main lead plaintiff. So he was there in the Supreme Court.
Right. So this. So
Yeah.
I mean. So here's a significant. This is Cincinnati, sort of a city that, if depending on where you live, you may not know where Cincinnati is. We're right at the Ohio River. We're always sort of
Yes.
in between the snowstorms. It's either below us in Kentucky, where it's going to ice today, or really above us, but we'll get a little bit. So Al is a significant individual who lives in Cincinnati, done amazing work. So you brought him in to do a video about integrity. So that was what we were.
And the most interesting thing I thought that he said was integrity develops over time when people know you and they observe you and your actions and words match and they are consistent. And then people can be vulnerable and risk. So he talked, for example, about the collaborative agreement and how he was able to come to an understanding which was different, which was innovative, which brought contested parties to the table because they had, although been in opposition for decades often on cases, they knew one another to be honest people and they had a common goal. And I just thought that was so interesting how integrity is really earned over time.
Right. No, I think that's really important.
You and I can have integrity in a moment, but people understand our integrity over time.
Well, I think what I think two pieces that I think about. I think we grant people, we hope when we first encounter
Yes.
them that I'm assuming that you're an honest broker. And then over time, I come to trust that, that you are, and that we can keep on
Yes.
pushing. And I think that's important. I think the challenge is when I work, I do a lot of teaching about ethics. I teach it at business schools. I talk with lawyers.
Can you believe they let him teach at a business school?
It's amazing. Well, they don't know what to do with me. But what's interesting is once trust is broken, it is harder to get back. I mean, you begin granting someone sort of a sense of trust that you believe there's integrity there. But if a person ruptures that, it takes
Yes.
far longer to recapture it because there's always a sense of wariness,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting. The other piece that Al said that I think is really interesting is when there really is real trust, then there can be risk.
And vulnerability, yes, and people can extend themselves and grow. So this is where there's the area for reconciliation and some real restitution. So, for example, he represented Samuel DuBose, the family in Cincinnati.
You want to talk about that? If
Yes,
people might not.
Samuel DuBose was an African-American gentleman who was shot by a University of Cincinnati police officer this summer, July 2015, and is currently being charged, actually the officer is, with murder by the county. And Al represented the family, and they have reached a kind of settlement. But one of the things Al talked about is the family doesn't want just money. And he says this is very typical. Families tend to want more than just money. This family wanted some difference made, and so they're going to have a marker to Samuel DuBose, and also
Would it be like a stone somewhere or something to identify
Yes.
where he was shot, or on campus, or
I
it's
don't
not
know
Got it.
yet. But also that the University of Cincinnati, who I think was pretty stricken by these events too, has offered to pay for the education of Samuel DuBose's 12 children. So that's, again, not something you always see in
Right.
settlement agreements, but it does a lot towards making some sort of amends and seeming to come a lot closer than a cold, hard courtroom case and arguing about money, you know.
Right.
So
That's
you know.
interesting, because I think,
Yes.
and that case, just for those of you who aren't in Cincinnati, it was in the New York Times. I saw it.
Oh, yes.
It made the front page. This was a major
Oh,
event.
yes.
But I think that sense of, I think something that makes Cincinnati a nice place to live, if you're looking for a nice place to live, given that it's a medium-sized, a small city,
Medium size, I'd say.
is people do know each other. I
Yes.
mean, the president of University of Cincinnati is not sort of high and far away. He's someone people
No.
you bump into.
Yes.
Same
with the mayor. Police officers, or chief police.
Chief police and chief.
Yeah.
I was with not the current chief, but the chief prior. We were actually
Yeah.
doing a program on ethics,
Yeah.
and he was parked. We were parked down near Freedom Park, and I said, "Hey, Chief, can I put my car right before you?" I said, "I'm not sure there's parking." He says, "I don't know either, but if you get a ticket, I'll get a ticket too." So I parked there.
On the program for ethics?
Yeah, because we were speaking down near the Freedom Center. There was a convention, and it was a long walk. It was like 95 degrees.
Can you imagine the chief getting a ticket?
He actually got the ticket. He got a ticket the first day he came to Cincinnati in his regular car. He said it was very funny. But I think this idea of vulnerability is interesting. That when people trust each other,
Yeah.
they can be a bit more exposed, and they can try something they might not otherwise try.
And I've been thinking more and more, how else are we going to solve seemingly intractable problems that have so much pain and hurt, and people desire vengeance because it's escalated over time. Where is the moment where there can be risk so that there can be some vulnerability and reconciliation? Because do we really want to fight one another endlessly? Probably not, although it can become a state of being.
Right. You get so used to it. And I think the challenge, too, is also to get people to realize, and this is part of what I talk about, the ethics. I think there's two pieces. One is about the kind of things you're talking about, reconciliation. The other is about one's personal quality of life. How do we want to feel about ourselves? I mean, getting people to understand that the mark they leave in the world is the mark that they leave. I mean, we're clergy. We both do funerals. We both sit with families when we're talking after
Yes.
someone's died. We may be talking to somebody's dying, and we said, "What's your life about?" Or "What was this person's life about?" What's your legacy?
How do you want to be remembered? Yes, I even think about that personally now because I do so many funerals.
Right.
It's impossible not to.
Right, and to me, that when I teach ethics, I think that's part of the reason my classes in ethics tend to be a bit different than other people, because I talk about that component. I bring my being a rabbi into the conversation about ethics and behavior. I say, at the end of the day, or the end of a life, what you did is what you are and who you were and the mark you left on this world. And do you want to be a person that people look to as someone they can trust? Do you want to look at yourself and feel good about it?
Yeah, well, and the members of our congregations would not be invested in there will be some heaven, there's some alternative
Right.
great, so like what you do here is of even more significance. How do we exist here? And something I always tell my son is, he'll be like, well, I could do this or that. I said, you want to be able to look at your face in the morning in the mirror and be proud of what you see. I mean, because at the end of the, I'll be looking at me in the mirror and think, am I proud of myself?
Right.
Did I exhibit integrity? That'll matter to me.
Right. That actually is the hardest test. Actually, when I do my program, one of the things, the very last thing I do is I put a mirror up.
Oh, wow.
And I just say that's the only test that really matters, because the fact is we can con somebody and they may never know it. but we know we did that.
Yeah, and the Soul Matters material has an interesting point about integrity. They talk about it as kind of having moral character, et cetera, but also being whole. And this is actually the point that interests me because it's a little bit more complicated. Because when we're whole people, we're honest and we fail and we make mistakes. So if you're going to be whole, you're going to be vulnerable, you're going to potentially at some point act without integrity, and you're going to learn from that. You know, and so what is the place of being one's authentic self and learning and being able to make mistakes and having that be okay? I mean, The Big Short, for example, was an awful example of integrity, just absence. Which I'm not talking about, the utter absence, but I'm talking about I have not lived a blameless life. Let's put it that way. I know.
Really? I'm shocked. I thought
You know, and I've done stuff.
You.
Well, thank you. You know, and I've done stuff I thought, that wasn't right. I need to apologize. I didn't exhibit my best self. I didn't live the way I wanted to live. I mean, and that's part of learning and being human. And so we kind of need space for that while having integrity and having a kind of mark to live towards or hope for.
Right. No, absolutely. Because I think that the other challenge is right. We're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
How do we grow from the mistakes? Do we also have an environment that we can grow within?
Yes.
And do we have a support network? And what does the network want of us? Because I think when I talk to business students, oftentimes I talk about: Are you going in? Do you think that the environment you're going into is going to support you being an ethical person? Or do you think it's going to be an environment that says, we want you to play close to the edge? That's the only way you're going to be successful.
I think that's a big question.
I mean, a lot of us, I think, don't the environment affects us, because I think we can be people with integrity if the environment encourages us that way,
Yes.
supports us, even allows us to say no. Sometimes I'm not going to do that, but I'm not going to be fired. I think there's this whole dynamic of making sure that exists.
Yes.
And that's in all aspects. I think it's. I mean, integrity exists in lots of different levels, whether it's in sort of interactions with individuals, with friends, family, relationships, the primary relationship people have. I use that as a lot. I talk about, the dyad, two people who commit themselves to each other. Are they able to do that? I mean, if you strip out love from a relationship and talk about it as an ethical dyad, what are the aspects of that? And I will explore that. And then there's the business piece of it, where I think a lot of people will say, and it's a line that you'll see in certain, I've seen it in movies, and it comes up when somebody does something awful, they say, it's only business. The idea being that in business you can be awful to somebody, but it's not, it's not personal, it's business. As if we can sort of segregate ourselves and compartmentalize ourselves and silo ourselves.
Well, and The Big Short, I think, was the purpose of that film was to show how many people in agencies siloed themselves in just that way, and how it ended up being a catastrophe for the United States and for the average American. And then they really leave you, and in the end, nothing significantly changed, and no one truly who should have been watching actually paid. And it leaves you really unsettled about integrity in our financial and banking systems and housing, and what it is today even.
Well, I think and it's all asking. There was a quote in the Financial Times years ago that said, "Trust is the lubricant that allowed the financial institutions to function."
Yes.
Because we have to trust that the information. I actually believe that trust is the lubricant that allows society to function.
I agree.
When I'm driving my car, and later on when it's bad, but when you're typically driving your car and you come to a green light and you know that the other side has a red light, you have to trust that the people who see the red light are going to stop.
Yes.
If not, traffic comes to a halt.
Or crashes.
Which comes to a halt.
Yes.
And society comes to a halt.
And people get hurt.
People get
There's
hurt. And
consequences beyond like, oh, that was a mistake,
Right. I mean, and I think, the financial, we've had multiple Ponzi schemes. There have been specifically in Cincinnati. There was the Bernie Madoff. And it wasn't just that somebody made a lot of money. The other side of the equation was there were people who lost everything.
Yes.
There were I know certain foundations that had money with Madoff, lost all the money. I know a person personally who they had to sell, a family had to sell an apartment or a house because the elderly woman couldn't live in it. They had no more money. And they had to figure out a way to do it. There are consequences, this behavior. And I think integrity is an interesting, is a great theme because it really is, it weaves together a whole set of elements, but ultimately becomes about the person. And it's a deeply religious question. What kind of people do we want to be? And I think given that, the kind of theology that we have, if there is no world afterlife where everything's going to be sort of come out in the wash, or the bad are going to be punished and the good are going to be rewarded, even if they led lousy, didn't get everything they should have deserved. What kind of lives do we want to leave? What kind of mark do we want to do? What do we want to pass on to the next generation?
That has actually been a major question in Unitarianism as long as it's existed. And Unitarianism comes from Puritanism. And the Puritans were deeply concerned about moral character. Was that the same in Judaism, this question of integrity and character?
That's interesting. I mean, Judaism has always been about this world.
Okay.
I mean, even within sort of the more traditional Orthodox Judaism is really a this world oriented, and it's always been about what do you do, what kind of behavior do you display.
So in that way, it is.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, but I've never thought about it. It's never been as philosophical as it has been articulated, as you just articulated. But it's about how do we live our lives, absolutely. I think that's what that's why it's been called a deed, not a creed religion. Yes. It's not about a belief. One's reward isn't coming from a belief.
We say deeds, not creeds, too.
Do you?
We do.
Wow. There's overlapping with contemporary religion, but Unitarian came out of a totally different place, Puritanism, versus out of Judaism, which has a much longer history. But I think that is a question that we could all ask, and the risk is, and this is why a lot of people don't like integrity, if we ask other people to have integrity, it means they can demand that of us. And then we have to live up to the values that we set. We all stumble, but how do we live up to that? Because at the end of the day, when we look in the mirror, whether it's at the end of today or it's the end of our lifetime today, what do we see? Are we proud?
And my favorite novels and movies are often the ones that deal with integrity, but they're ambivalent. I need to be honest, because sometimes society is like, well, you need to do this or you should just do that, but human nature is slightly different. And I'm not saying, you go cheat people, but sometimes there's rules that it's really hard to know what to do. I don't think integrity is easy. I don't think it's always evident. And I think most of us will kind of try, not be happy, try again in the course of our lifetime. Right. We're going to continue to engage and evolve, and we're going to take stands on things, but we're also going to err.
We are, and the challenge too is, and I think when you said, most situations aren't black and white.
Yes.
What really is, what I think integrity really is about is we have a series of values that we are wrestling with in every situation, and we try to act on those. The problem becomes in some situations when you have competing values, which one should be...
Or ideas of personal safety. So for a great one, I work in the city of Cincinnati a lot, and it is not necessarily considered wise or safe to be an informant in the city. That's happened in many different places. And so even if someone knows something about a crime, they might not report it, but they might report it because it troubles them so much. So what is the right or wrong thing to do in that situation? Mm-hmm. What if you feel like you put yourself or your family at risk? I mean, these are not easy questions, and I don't think it's like, well, that was no integrity, that was a lot. I think more often than not, we're kind of trying really hard in a complicated world to figure out what it is.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Mm-hmm. So we're going to keep on trying.
We are.
And struggling.
Yeah.
But that's what it is to be human.
Well, and I think a person of faith should be vulnerable and should risk. So we should risk integrity. I mean, we should act with integrity and see what happens. Not like throw it out the window.
Yeah, that's what you meant. I knew you got it. I knew that you had it.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, thanks for being here on a sort of snowy day. We're going to continue reading with the challah. You'll read that?
As the fingers of the challah intertwine, so do we join hands in our common humanity, sharing the fruits of our labors. We cherish that which has been created through human effort. For it is through the work of our hands, the strength of the human spirit, the vision of our minds, that our dreams are woven into the tapestry of time. We celebrate the accomplishments of yesterday and today, anticipating the possibilities of tomorrow. May the sharing of this challah strengthen our bonds with others who walk upon the earth.
Baruch Hamal Kapenu, blessed is the work of our hands. Baruch Hazon Ha'adam, blessed is the vision of our minds. Baruch Lechem Ha'aretz, blessed is the bread of the earth. And then if you have some juice or some wine, join with me. We celebrate the fruit of the vine and the bounty of nature as we lift the cup and sip from it. For we are part of nature, which gave us birth and continues to sustain us. Even as we depend upon nature, so do we influence its course. Through the search for understanding, we gain the knowledge to shape our world. Guided by the best of human wisdom and the compassion of our spirit, we accept the responsibility which rests upon us. May the taste of this wine upon our lips stir within us a reverence for nature and a respect for human endeavor. Bruchim ha'chayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim ha'chayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And so we say, l'chaim, to life.
L'chaim. I always like the readings.
Thanks.
They're beautiful.
I appreciate that. This is what Beth Adam really began as a community trying to create new liturgy.
I always feel like they quiet me. They really the focus on
I
the.
appreciate that.
They do. I love them.
Thank you. So I'm really proud of that because and I want to say a lot of people say, "Oh, Bob, you must have written this stuff," and it really isn't. I mean, this has been a really collaborative effort. We've had teams of people over the 36 years of the congregation, and it's evolved and changed. And I mean, and there's been some amazing writing. And what's nice is the people who did it had a lot of integrity and a lot of commitment. They were willing to sit in a room together and share their stuff, be vulnerable. And when someone said, I'm not quite sure that works for me, they were willing to hear it. Everybody sort of left their ego aside to create something bigger. And I'm very proud of the work that they did, and I'm proud that you like it. That's very sweet.
I always enjoy the reading.
Well, thanks, and thanks for being here. Next week, Shep Englander, who is the executive director of the Jewish Federation of Cincinnati, is going to be here. We're going to talk. The Jewish Federation is a community partner with us when Rabbi Rami Shapiro is coming to town. So Shep will be here. We'll have a conversation about what's the future of Judaism and a little bit of what a Jewish Federation does. I also encourage you always to go to ourjewishcommunity.org, our website, and go to our Facebook page. We're posting new things all the time. There's always materials to explore on our website. Of course, share what we're doing with others. This is how we grow this community, how we make this a value to others who may not know we exist. You're our best tool to communicate with other people because there are lots of folks out there who really are looking, but they don't necessarily know that something like this exists, that a rabbi and a minister can talk about integrity over wine and over candles and over challah and have an impression. So we're delighted you're here. Drive home safely. If you're already home, stay home. If you're in a dangerous area, be careful. If you're not, think about all of those people who are covered and blanketed in snow. And we're going to close with our final words. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.